everybody, my name is Eric Hopkins and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're finding me for the very first time, please click that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get all the notifications about when I put up new content right here on this channel. So Friday morning, I got a chance to watch Black Widow, the new Marvel Studios film. I believe it's like the 24th film or something like that in the franchise. It's been so long, it's hard to keep track about how many they've actually had at this point. So I got to watch it on Disney Plus via Premier Access, where you get to pay a $30 fee, but you get to watch the movie as many times as you like. So if you have a family of 4 or something like that, it's actually cheaper than going to a movie theater where you have to pay for popcorn and soda and all that stuff. You can buy some cheap snacks at home and you can watch the film over and over again. But you do have the option to go see the movie in theaters or check it out on Disney Plus like I did. And I thought it was a really cool experience getting to watch it at home. Of course, I have a big TV and a pretty good home theater system and things like that, so it worked out for me. But I wanted to get into a spoiler review. But before I do that, I want to give a couple of non-spoiler thoughts I have about this movie. First of all, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's definitely the first movie we've got to see of the Marvel Studios films in 2 years coming out. We've been getting some TV shows earlier this year, but it's been a long drought, and it's good to see that Marvel Studios films are back in full swing here. So it's definitely good to check out a new one for sure. It was a lot of fun. I thought that the movie had a lot of winter-esque action and vibe to it. There's some really cool action set pieces, especially in the middle to second to third act or somewhere in there. There was a really cool motorcycle chase sequence as well earlier on in the film. I had some minor nitpicks of the film, but for the most part, it answered all the questions I had about Natasha Romanoff. It set up another character moving forward and maybe a couple others, but one in particular. And it also had a really nice post-credit scene that set up a Disney Plus TV show that'll be coming to the streaming service here in the end of the year here around fall. I believe October is the rumored release date for that. Well, we don't have a confirmed date yet, but I think it did a good job to answering all the questions I had. Like I said, I'll get into some of the details when it comes to my positives and negatives in my spoiler section. So I recommend, if you have not checked out this film yet, check out now. Come back after you've seen the movie, and I'll get into all the juicy details after this spoiler warning. So check it out. Here we go. So the one thing I really wanted this movie to answer was the whole Budapest question. If you've been following the MCU and the Natasha Romanoff character of Black Widow in particular, they've been making multiple references with her and Jeremy Renner's character Hawkeye about what went down in Budapest. Always making references to Budapest since the original Avengers 1 film all the way through Avengers Endgame. Budapest, Budapest, Budapest. What happened there? This story basically, to kind of tell the backstory of this, the story, revolves around, the fact that Natasha Romanoff grew up in the Red Room, which is a room that basically trained young girls, and they kidnapped them and trained them to be assassins. And the guy who was running the Red Room is Dreykov, which is a character that was mentioned all the way back in the very first Avengers film when Natasha Romanoff is talking to Loki when he's captured on the helicarrier, and Loki's talking about how she's got a lot of red in her ledger and she'd like to wipe it out by working for S.H.I.E.L.D., and he talks about Dreykov's daughter, Sao Paulo. All this stuff is referenced in this film, and we finally get a little bit of information of what he was talking about to her there. So it's cool to see that they finally went into detail with it. Obviously, she tried to take out Dreykov, and by doing so, she blew up the building he was in. And of course, there was, his daughter was in the building, and when Black Widow assumed that she died in that film, and of course, she took that really hard, and there was a lot of, it's all the other things that's on her hand that she really wants to wipe out, but that was the big aspect there, and Hawkeye was the one to kind of help her, defect from the Widow program and join S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's why she referenced in Endgame how he didn't judge her based on her worst mistakes. So it kind of comes full circle here, and it makes a lot of sense when you look into the content and the context of the entire series. So I really enjoyed the fact that they finally gave us the explanation to what went down there. It wasn't anything that really took a lot of time in the film. I thought they did a good job of at least addressing it and finally giving us those little answers. Even as small as it was a nice little bit of detail that they finally gave us. So I was very happy about that. Also, I felt the film did a very good job of explaining, other things about Natasha, like, where she went after Civil War, where she was on the run from the, the government with General Ross on her tail. We got to the explanation of how she got the short blonde hair, and of course how she got the vest, which ended up being a vest that was owned by her sister, Yelena Belova, which is a character they set up in this movie. A lot of this movie is is centered around Yelena. It's mostly a Black Widow movie but it entails more than just one Black Widow. It tells the story of the Widow program and things like that. Obviously, Natasha is the central character, but I felt like Yelena Belova almost shared the equal amount of screen time, which it makes some sense because Florence Pugh, who plays Yelena Belova, is going to be set up as the new Black Widow in the MCU moving forward after the untimely death of Black Widow's character in Avengers Endgame, which they reference in the post-credit scene, but I'll get to that here in just a second. But it was nice to see that we got some explanation about the vest that Natasha wore in Avengers Infinity War, which ended up being Yelena's vest that she got in this movie. So she carried that as, and to honor her since they split up at the end of this film. So it was really cool to see that explanation. And, of course, like I mentioned, all the stuff about her ledger being dripping red that they got into as well. So I thought they did a great job of bringing that full circle to the first Avengers film. So I really appreciated it. Great action set pieces. There was a good motorcycle chase sequence early on in the film. I thought the helicopter sequence toward the finale of the movie was great. Of course, the skydiving type sequence that when they brought down the Red Room, because it was this floating platform like helicarrier type station where they were training the widows. So she brought it down. All that stuff is great, and I thought that the family dynamic that they had with Widow's fake family, because the Russians set up this family to kind of as a cover for Natasha and Yelena and things like that, the Red Room and all this stuff. And I thought that the father, who was father figure played by David Harbour here, who's playing Alexei, and of course Rachel Weisz, who's playing Melina. I thought they did a good job in their roles. They're not as substantial as Yelena and Black Widow in the movie, but I thought they did a good job doing their roles and portraying a family-like structure that Widow and Yelena grew up with. So it was an interesting dynamic because we got these lines in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame where Scarlett Johansson's Natasha was talking about how she finally got this family in the Avengers. So when I saw the trailers for Black Widow and they were talking about how, we're family, my girls, and all this stuff, I'm like, well, she was telling the Avengers she didn't have a family. Either she was lying to them or kept it from them or something, but it comes to find out it was all a cover and she really didn't have a real family. She didn't really know her real mother. We get some details into her real family a little bit. They don't mention her father much, which is good because the father is referenced in Avengers Endgame when they went up to get the Soul Stone on Vormir, and the Red Skull said that he knew her father's name, and she said she didn't know it. So it all tied in very nicely. They didn't contradict anything in the MCU so far, so I thought that was really good. But they also explained about how she actually had some sort of a family growing up, but even though it wasn't real, it was real to her, and it was real to Yelena, but to the father figure, the Red Guardian, Alexei, who actually I thought was really good. I thought David Harbour did a good job in this movie. He's basically this Russian version of Captain America, but he wasn't frozen in ice for all those years and things like that. He's very egotistical and very strong-headed and things like that, and he wants to be the best super soldier that ever lived because he got some super soldier serum. It was kind of like a Russian experiment, and of course he was the Russian version of the Captain America that they had. So it would have been really cool to see Captain America versus Red Guardian. That would be really cool to see. Maybe we'll get to see that eventually one day with the new incarnation of Captain America, maybe going toe-to-toe with him. That would be kind of cool, but we'll have to wait and see what they do. But I thought Rachel Weisz, she really didn't have a very big role in this film, but when she was on screen, I thought she did a good job with it. She was basically the architect of the Red Room and the Widow program, so I thought they did a good job with that. We also got some General Ross in this movie. He was obviously, after Civil War, was trying to track some of the Avengers down who didn't adhere to the Sokovia Accords, and one of them obviously was being Widow herself. So I thought we got a really cool tease here to possibly the future of General Ross. He was limping a bit on a cane, and I believe the cane had some red in it, so it's kind of a little bit of a nice little tease at the fact that he could become the Red Hulk at some point like he did in the comics. And since we're getting a She-Hulk series coming out, and it appears that with some of the characters they're introducing, which we'll get into with the post-credit scene here in a minute, that Thunderbolts, which is a team that could be led by General Ross, could be coming to either Disney Plus or a movie here before too much longer. Some of the new characters they're setting up in the series and these movies, they're definitely leaning toward the fact that we could be getting a Thunderbolts movie at some point. So I'm hoping we'll actually get to see Thunderbolt Ross as Red Hulk as well. That could be really cool. We could go into a lot of these different Hulks, and I think that would be a lot of fun. So we're getting She-Hulk. That's a good start for it as well. I thought the post-credit scene was let's save that to the end. I thought there's a couple of the negatives of this film. Two negatives I really had. One in particular was Taskmaster. I really like Taskmaster, but I feel like they didn't do the character justice in the movie. And it didn't even bother me for the fact that they kind of, race changed it, or whatever you want to call it. Well, it wasn't race change. Gender bending is what they did. I'm sorry. And they made Taskmaster a woman. That part didn't bother me. Taskmaster in the comics was obviously Tony Masters. He was a male figure. The fact that Taskmaster is a woman is fine. Of course, they were trying to, she ended up being Dreykov's daughter, the daughter that supposedly was killed, and that Black Widow had all this guilt over from Budapest. But it turns out she wasn't killed; she was just horribly scarred and burned from the explosions. And of course, Dreykov turned her into this Terminator-like machine that would obey his every command, much like the Widow program. The Widow program kind of became a bit like the Winter Soldier program, where they can be programmed, and no matter what, they can't stop themselves from murdering or killing or doing whatever their mission is. So I thought that was a cool little dynamic, kind of throwing back to the Winter Soldier stuff. So could we possibly get some, Bucky Barnes and Yelena Belova interactions in the future? Very possible. We could actually see that coming. But the reason why I didn't care for what they did with Taskmaster, though, was the fact that she wasn't in the movie very long. I like how they did keep it comic accurate, where the character was, mimicking fighting styles. I noticed Black Panther in there a couple times. I noticed Captain America and Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, as well as, of course, the fact that she was mimicking Black Widow herself in a lot of this. So I did appreciate that, but I felt like the Taskmaster in the comics was a much bigger arch enemy, and I thought that he was kind of wasted in this film. She was, and I thought that and who knows, maybe we'll get to see her again. She did live at the end of this film, but she kind of, along with the other widows in the program, kind of got their mind freed up, so they're not under the control of this Dreykov character who ended up getting killed in this film. So they're not under his thumb anymore. So does that, but there are other Widow operatives still out throughout the world, either not activated yet, or they're just, I don't know who's be controlling them at this point. So there is room here for a Black Widow sequel. So who's to say Taskmaster won't come back, and maybe we'll get more of her character. And then who's to say that she doesn't meet, what was the guy's name? Tony Masters, and maybe, he trains her up, or maybe he becomes a new Taskmaster. There's always things that they can do moving forward. So just because it didn't work for me in this film doesn't mean they're not planting the seeds of maybe making Taskmaster a much bigger villain moving forward. Of course, we got Iron Man 3 when, the Mandarin wasn't really well liked in that film, either what they did with the little trickery they pulled with Trevor Slattery. So who's to say, since we're getting, the Mandarin back, the real Mandarin, and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings coming out in September, who's to say we won't get that with Taskmaster as well? So it's a minor nitpick of mine, but it is a nitpick I did have. Also, I felt like there was a scene toward the end of the movie where, the big climactic, finale ended, and Black Widow is standing there, and General Ross is coming up to arrest everybody. Of course, he's still after her after Civil War, like I said, and she just kind of stands there and waits, and she lets everybody else escape. And then, of course, the cars are rolling up, and all of a sudden she's standing there, and then they cut away, and then the next scene she's just walking away, like, she's got her short blonde hair and the vest on, like she's about ready to go patch things up with the Avengers or try to find Steve Rogers. That leads up into the events of Infinity War, and I'm like, General Ross was right there. Did she escape? I guess you're just meant to assume she got out and she got away, or, she escaped before they rolled in, but they were rolling right in when she was still standing there. So to me, it felt like a scene was cut, and it didn't make a whole lot of narrative sense. And the storyline was just kind of like, all right, what happened? How did she get away? So that was a nitpick I had. But yeah, so that's really the only two major flaws I had in the film personally. When it comes to the post-credit scene, though, I thought they did also a great job of setting up the new Hawkeye series that is going to be coming to Disney+. The post-credit scene was basically, the majority of this film takes place between Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War in the timeline. But the post-credit scene takes place after Avengers Endgame, after Black Widow has died on Vormir to get the Soul Stone. So it has a bit of a time jump here, and you see Yelena Belova, her sister, visiting Natasha Romanoff's grave, which I'm assuming is an empty grave because she was, left for dead on Vormir, so I'm sure they never got the body back. But it shows her, going up to the tombstone and, paying her respects. It looked like she's been keeping up the gravestone for a lot of time there with flowers and pictures and things like that. And then when you get Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Seinfeld, Elaine from Seinfeld shows up again. If you've seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier, she shows up in that show as Valentina. I can't remember her full name. It's a long name. But anyway, she's basically, working for the government and things like that. So, it's a tease that for a possible Thunderbolts series as well. She obviously recruited John Walker in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. And I'm sure she's got her hands in some other, dirty crimes or whatever she's doing here. She's very suspect to me, absolutely. But she's putting together this roster, obviously. And, of course, Yelena has apparently worked with her before because she gives her this picture of Hawkeye and says that he's the reason that your sister Natasha is dead, that he's no longer around. So clearly we're going to be getting Yelena Belova show up in the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus this fall. So that makes me much more excited for that series than I was already. I heard some rumors that she may be in that show. I think now it's absolutely confirmed for sure. Of course, Hawkeye will be training up Haley Steinfeld's character of Kate Bishop to take over his mantle as Hawkeye in that film or in that show. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Yelena possibly on the hunt for Hawkeye himself. So with that being said, that's pretty much my review for the Black Widow movie. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I would probably give it a solid 8 out of 10. Like I said, those few minor nitpicks are the only real reasons I didn't care for it. But for the most part, it had good action, good storytelling. Everything tied well together with the MCU overall. It didn't contradict anything. It didn't really drag. I didn't really feel like I wanted to fall asleep or anything like that. It was just a lot of fun. Had some good little humor in it here and there. Nothing too crazy or too corny. Most of the jokes hit, I thought. So for the most part, I think it is a solid film. If you're a big fan of the MCU or of the Black Widow character in general, I highly recommend you check this out either in theaters or on Disney Plus, either way. But that'll do it for me, guys. But let me know. Comment down below. What do you guys think about the Black Widow movie coming out from Marvel Studios here? Please let me know in the comments section. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get all the notifications about when I put up new content right here on this channel. And until my next video, guys, take care.
Boogie.